Okay, so for this one I'm going to give it a title of Snake in the Woods and also Spiritual Armour. It's two parts to the dream, and I do obviously thoughts on it. It's very symbolic. A lot of it is quite symbolic, but I imagine most people understand what it's all about quite quickly anyway. So how this one all starts is everything. It starts off in the woods, in a sort of forested area, and what happens is I'm not seeing through my eyes. I'm seeing through. I'm seeing sort of slightly back. I'm probably about 3 or 4 meters, let's say, roughly away from what we're looking at. And what we're basically looking at is this same little patch, which is basically it's me, my wife, and my 2 children all lying on the ground, and we're lying on it's like bear skins or something like that, something that's nice and warm. We're lying on that, have the same sort of thing over us. I think we have it over us, but to be honest, I don't remember seeing whether there was anything over us, but certainly we were lying on something like bear skin, that kind of thing, nice and warm. But we're all lying side by side. So it's my wife who's hugging my eldest daughter, and I'm hugging my youngest, Sophie, who featured in literally the previous dream to this one, which was a witchcraft one. I can't remember what name I gave it. I think it was something like witchcraft. Was it interceding? It's something like that that I did earlier today. Which is why you'll see loads of videos with the same t-shirt on. I'm videoing loads and loads today. So as I said, so you see all 4 of us, we're all lying down, and we're talking about, oh wow, listen to all the nature and stuff like that. So it starts off with me saying, oh look, can you hear that? That's a stag in the background. I could hear it was a stag, and then randomly I was then looking through the eyes of this stag. So I was seeing this stag just walking around in the forest. It was quite a distance from us. I mean, we couldn't see it. We could just hear it in the background, but we could hear small animals and stuff like that as well. But I was seeing through the eyes of this stag, and the way it looked was basically like a photo negative of how we see. So it was like it had its own night vision on, because it was very, very dark at the time. But we were looking. It was looking, just wandering around the forest, and everything that we would see as dark, it saw as light. Everything that we saw as light, it saw as dark. But it was white mainly, and with dark shadows and parts to sort of make out what was going on. I don't think that's necessarily how they see at all. That's just how I saw in this particular dream. Then went back to me just standard vision. So as I said, I'm not seeing through my eyes in this scenario. I'm actually apart from it, several meters back, and I'm just looking on at myself lying there. So we're all listening out to wildlife and stuff like that, and I'm sort of saying, oh, did you hear that? Did you hear this? Did you hear that? Little creatures were going by us, but we weren't really paying too much attention, and it got to the point where we were going to go to sleep now. So my wife kind of, more sort of lied down with my eldest daughter, and I lied down as well, my youngest daughter in front of me, and I was just sort of arm around her, making sure she was okay. And yeah, then I started to hear something else that was rustling around quite close to us. So I kind of sat up, and at this point I was assuming that everybody else was asleep. Certainly my wife and my eldest daughter were asleep, because I could, sort of look behind me, see that they were both asleep. My daughter, because she was in front of me, I couldn't really tell whether she was asleep. I got the feeling that she was. So I sat up, and I was kind of on guard to a certain extent, but even though I was trying to sleep myself, we felt quite comfortable. We felt quite safe, really, in the forest. And as I sort of sat up, kind of braced myself, put my hands down, and I was just looking around, seeing where this noise was coming from. And what I saw come just behind us, so behind my wife and everything, all behind us, I saw it was a toad or a frog, one of the two, but it was just leaping across, and I was just watching it as it was jumping, across, and it kind of led my gaze across to an area where there was a, a completely fallen down tree. So that was all collapsed on the ground. And I watched this thing come across to there. And again, I say I'm looking at it. Obviously, I'm watching it, seeing myself watch it, lying down. But I got a sense of what was going on from me as the observer, which sounds a bit bizarre, but I could see things that my character of me couldn't see. And this is probably because, behind this this collapsed log was actually behind that was a snake, and it was hiding in the shadows. I wouldn't have been able to see it because it was probably only just about as high as this big log was, and so it was completely concealed. But me being 2, 3, 4 meters back could see from a different vantage point, because I was also the vantage point was sort of slightly above as well, so it was like a security camera sort of kind of point of view. But anyway, I saw that there was this snake. Now, in this, I kind of looked at the snake looked at me, but this was looking more at my character, I suppose, or me. I can't remember quite how it went, but there was just this knowing of, what I'm thinking and I know what you're thinking kind of thing. And I kind of just turned, because I was trying to see where this snake was looking, because it was now looking more like this kind of direction, so the complete opposite direction. So the direction I was facing when I was lying down, but now I'm sat up and I'm looking kind of more sideways. But I'm looking at this snake and thinking, well, where are you looking? And I'm looking, as I look behind me, I realise that my daughter Sophie, she's just got up, who I thought was asleep in front of me, has got up and she's just wandered off into the forest. So she's got quite deep into the forest. She's probably about 50 to 75 feet away from me, so quite a distance really, that she'd got in this short time, that I was distracted by this toad basically, and looking to see what the intent of this snake was. The snake as well was all kind of coiled up, and it was like a typical sort of green and black patterning. And as I said, we kind of locked eyes. It was looking over there, and then it decided, right, I'm going after her. But it didn't sort of sliver along ground level, it went underground. So it obviously had some sort of a underground tunneled out bit that it was going through. So by the time I sort of pushed myself up and got myself up, I'm thinking I'm going to have to run over there and obviously warn her as quickly as I possibly can and see what I can do to obviously stop whatever's going to happen next. So by the time I even just get up, this thing has managed to slither all the way down to where she is, and is already up through the hole and has coiled up and is in a strike pose, where it's kind of almost like a python, kind of arched itself back, and it's ready to go if it needs to. But it just very much knew, that this is my prey kind of thing, and I'm, the king of this jungle kind of thing, and it did make, again, king of the jungle, made me kind of think, so it did very much make me think of, in the Jungle Book, you've got Mowgli, who gets hypnotized, doesn't he, by a snake. The snake's hanging in the tree, and it does all like the weird eyes and everything, doesn't it, with the snake, and hypnotizes him. But Sophie was looking very, very just sort of stunned, hypnotized. She wasn't moving. She was just standing there while this thing was towering above her. This snake was absolutely massive. So I mean, she's, let's say, a little over 5 foot. Let's say 5'2", 5'3". This was quite a bit taller than her, so it's probably about 5'8", 6 foot, something like that. It was very big in comparison to her, probably unrealistically big. And it looked like a kind of boa constrictor kind of thing. It was a big snake, and it also this is how it kind of matches up very much like one of the previous streams I did record, which was where Sophie was under some sort of witchcraft spell. So where she was staring at a fence and there was some teenagers that were casting spells on her. Same sort of thing, she was just like, are you there? She was completely out of it, just transfixed to this kind of hypnotic state. And this snake was talking to her in this dream. So it was talking to her. I don't know whether that was telepathically or whether that was actual, speaking in some way. But I was just very aware that it was communicating with her, but at any point it could obviously just bite her and then that would be it. Or, constrictor, and then that's game over. So as I said, I'm getting up and I'm sprinting now. I'm at full speed, going as quickly as I possibly can through this wood, and negotiating around all the trees and bits and pieces. But as I'm running, I'm having these thoughts of just absolute anger, real rage of when I get to this thing, I'm going to absolutely smash it, as hard as I possibly can. I'm going to kick it as hard as I possibly can, just destroy this thing, because now it's going after my family. And so I'm, as I said, going at full pace. As I get quite close, this snake kind of realises I'm getting close to it, and decides it's done what it's looked to achieve. So it said what it needed to say, and it slithers back down very slowly, very calmly, which is really irritating. Really calmly, as I'm going as fast as I possibly can. And as I'm getting closer, I'm thinking, there's enough of the tail exposed. I'm going to be able to smash this tail, kick it as hard as I possibly can, snap its tail off, basically. But as I got closer and closer and closer, I got to the point where I just basically made a decision of, do I really want to kind of, kind of poke this, hornet's nest, that's going to then, who knows what will happen if I really go against it and kick this thing and really anger it. This thing's massive. And so I decided I was just going to run past it. So I literally just ran past it, with the kick, literally just ready to do it. But then I just sort of swung my foot past it and ran on past, thinking, well, look, Sophie's safe. She's safe now. And then that's how the dream ended, was me just kind of running past, and then it ended there. Now the next dream, I'm not sure if it's connected, because there's elements of it that could be connected. So so the next dream starts as part of I'm on a horse, and we're kind of just galloping along slowly along a kind of hilly, grassy sort of area, and and we're wearing armour, so we're knights basically, but it wasn't armour like like knights in the medieval kind of knights, not like the British, the English knights were, or the French or the German or anything like that. It's it was basically like strips of plate armour. So it's just basically lots of strips, which made it move very easily with your body because of how thin these strips of metal were. So you could move everything. And how I actually saw it, I was looking at the knight in front of me. So it started off, so if you imagine your left and your right shoulder, it was basically in a V shape that went down to the very base of your back on both left and right. So it made a V shape there. And as I said, it was all these super thin slats of metal, and probably something around the spinal bit, I think there was, to create maximum sort of mobility in this. Obviously it was armour that went the whole way around, but that's the bit that was sort of super flexible. Really good for being on a horse when you bent over and stuff like that. It felt very flexible. And anyway, so we get up to where we're going, so the horses stop, and we get off of our horses and we arrive at this little lake. I say little lake, you can't really say little and lake, can you, at the same time? But it was like a big water area, so I can't remember quite how big it was, but what I saw was quite a tall woman who was wading out of the water. So she was already in the water. It looked like potentially she'd been bathing, but she was fully clothed. She was wearing a white dress that went all the way down to pretty much her feet, and she had a presence about her. So I would say she kind of reminded me almost like of a Viking kind of woman that's kind of, I don't know. I just got this kind of strong woman kind of presence from her. But what was really weird, obviously she's just waded out this water, was I can't remember if there was a knight or there was somebody who was standing in front of her, and then she pulled out this knife, and I thought she's going to kill this guy because she's walking up behind him. But actually, even more weird, what she did is she got this knife, and I thought, she's going to cut her throat because she went up like that, but she actually cut more across here. It was just around, it was kind of almost, it was below her throat, and it was just, she slit across there, and there was sort of blood that came out. But that's kind of how it sort of ended. It kind of ended quite abruptly. I didn't really understand what that was all about. And so what I'll go through now is thoughts about the dreams, but also other things that kind of came up. So there's this background to what all this was all about, really. So my thoughts immediately after the dream were and no idea why my family would be obviously sleeping in a forest like that. That's very, very strange. I imagine it was just really just a setting. I guess a setting, for the dream. Obviously, I had a medieval dream where I was in a castle within the city walls and stuff. No idea why. It was just a setting for the dream. But the day before this dream, I'd actually been watching a video which was talking about the snake that spoke to Eve, and it made me obviously think of that, the way this snake was obviously speaking to Sophie, and so I associate the snake with Satan, which obviously is obviously pretty iconic in the Bible. The serpent, the snake is obviously representative of that. But I'd also watched a film as well. This was I think the night before or something like that. It was quite recently, but it was talking about there was a woman, I think it was like an assassin or something like that. They let out scorpions into her house, and I think she put her hand on a light switch or something, or she'd walked into the house and went to put the light switch on, and then there was a scorpion on there that whack, got a finger in, a hand, and then she died. So she got killed by this. But yeah, as I said, it was very much like a predator prey kind of scenario, and that this as I said, this snake felt like it had the upper hand. Regarding the knights on horses, I had actually watched a video as well, which was to do with the horses and how they will obviously will return on horses, with Jesus in his second coming. So maybe obviously the horse element and the armour could have been something to do with that. But later that day, so this is obviously late night, early morning, kind of dream. So later that day, around about 3 o'clock, we were watching a TV series called Yellowstone, which you may have seen, which is all kind of set in the Wild West sort of thing, but modern day. So not Wild West at all, but sorry, you know what I mean, kind of cowboy-like scenario. So in this series, there's actually a young boy, and he was playing. I think it's actually an episode where they had some dynamite. They found one of the characters, his family basically found something, and they were using dynamite to blow it up in their kind of yard area. But basically there was a bit where he ends up playing, came into contact with a snake, and he basically stamped on a snake. So this is more like a green-brown rather than the green-black that I saw in the dream. But the boy, in this particular episode, he's covered in blood, and his dad's asking him, have you got bit? Have you got bit? And he said, no. I got to it first and stamped on it. And as soon as I saw that, I kind of thought, whoa, okay, that's to do with the dream. I mean, that's pretty much what I was looking to do in that dream. I was racing towards that snake to stamp on it, to kick it. That's what I was looking to do, to kill it. So the similarity between the two dreams was pretty pronounced, because also the boy was around about pretty much exactly the same age as my daughter was in this. In this scenario, he dealt with it differently. The dad, again, wasn't around in the same way as in my dream. I wasn't around because I'd taken my eyes distracted by these frogs, this frog leaping about, and taken my eyes off, and she got into contact with this snake. And it made me think of course, the verse in Luke. So Luke 10:19 says, "Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions." So again, it roped in that second film that I'd watched the night before. So tread on serpents and scorpions, and over the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. And it's obviously what Jesus said. So so as we know, obviously serpents representing snakes and scorpions representing, well, the same thing. It's serpents, it's all dark demonic kind of iconography, isn't it? Really, of dark demonic forces and all of that kind of stuff. So I just thought it's crazy, the connection between what we were watching on TV and obviously what had happened there. The woman was being killed obviously by scorpions. And I just thought, what are the chances of these two things coming up within hours in the same day? And this has happened to me before with something else as well, where I had confirmation and it was just so spot on. It was so ridiculous as to what I had dreamt. So this was, again, prophecy? No. More, I would have said, confirmation. So, and I kind of thought about, how I ran past that snake and I wasn't looking to stir up any kind of trouble. It was kind of like, oh, let Satan do what he wants to do. I don't want to go and, poke the bear or anything. But I thought, no, not at all. You should literally look to take it out in the same way as that little boy, took out that snake, killed it. That's what we should be aiming to do. So we're not here, to play nice with demons and accommodate them in any way. We are at war. We are completely at war with dark and demonic forces, and we shouldn't be looking to give them any kind of room. There's not going to ever be any kind of peace whatsoever, obviously, between us and Satan. And yeah. So we need to, obviously, for me, it made me think. Obviously, we need to take authority. We need to know, obviously, who we represent here on earth, and that it's essentially like a call to arms, isn't it? To fight against what we can't see, which is difficult, but obviously we need to fight in the spirit. Another thing that I didn't mention, I realised when I was talking about that dream, was when I was lying down. This is back to the snake dream. When I was lying down, the only thing I had was a pencil. This is a pen. All I had was a pencil as a weapon, and it made me actually think. Just reflecting on it now, like our weapon is like the written word. The fact that we have the word, we have the word of God, and that is our weapon. That is our weapon against obviously all of this. We in ourselves can't fight dark demonic forces or anything like that, but we certainly can through obviously the authority that we're given by God to actually do that. What else we got here? I also thought about obviously the frogs. So again, frogs are in scripture a few times, of course. Obviously there's the frogs of the plagues of Egypt, but I wasn't really thinking of those, but that is obviously one of the things. I mean, that, as far as I know, that's an interesting thing actually for anybody to look into, is the symbology of those plagues that happened on Egypt. They were all to do with the gods of the Egyptians, and it was God saying, look, there you go, I'm better than that one, I'm better than that one, I'm better than that one. The Nile, right, I'm going to, sort of hit that with essentially stab that, kind of like with my staff, as in Moses, right, that's now turning to blood, the Nile's effectively being killed, all the water turning to blood, the frogs, I think that was something to do with fertility, something like that, fertility god. Here you go, here's that, here's all the wasps, all the locusts and stuff like that. It was all these various different things that God was actually doing. Like, is it Osiris, or is that the sun god? One of those. Right, okay, well, I'm gonna turn off, to effectively turn off the sun. You're not gonna have any sun, because I'm more powerful than your god. That's the sun god. So all of those ones, again, it's worth looking into, because it is really, really interesting, because I didn't know that for quite a while. The backstory to all of this is obviously, and I mentioned really in the previous dream, which was, they were quite close together actually. This dream, when was this? This dream was actually back on the 4th of the 4th, 2025, and that previous witchcraft one was the 12th of the 3rd, 2025. So they weren't even a month away, about 3 weeks away between each other. But again, it was another warning dream. And the backstory to this is that my youngest daughter Sophie, she's just gone into what we call in UK high school, which is when you're sort of age, was it sort of like 10, 11, something like that. You go into sort of more grown-up school, from being in a junior school. And it's been a bit of a leap for her. It's a big jump really. All of your kind of friends that you've been friends with for pretty much her entire school life, all going to go their separate ways. So she's been she's been struggling obviously with adjusting. She only went in September, so that would have been September of 2024, wouldn't it? Is that right? September 2024. No, forget that part. But yeah, so she hadn't really been in school for all that long, so it's taken time to obviously get used to it. She's had a lot of stress. She's had a lot of problems. The lead up to this, I'll try and go into limited detail, but basically the night before this dream, there was something that happened where I noticed that Sophie had a scarring on her arm, which I was a bit suspicious of, if I'm totally honest. I was a bit suspicious of, and I thought, was this self-inflicted? It actually looked like a burn, like an oven burn. It looked really nasty, really painful. It was weeping. It was obviously relatively, maybe a day old, 2 days old maximum. But straight after that, I actually went downstairs after seeing it, and I had a real conviction to go straight into prayer. So I was in prayer straight away, and I was actually, doing all sorts of prayers around, have been protected against any kind of negative thoughts and anything to do with self-harm, anything like that, banishing anything in the way of any kind of dark demonic forces, anything that was looking to deceive her in any way, all of that kind of stuff. And I was going into that area really, really, really heavily. And then it was a bit later, so I think it was days later, we found out that it was actually to do with that, unfortunately. So there's been a lot of spiritual warfare that's gone on. One of the things, just jumping back out of that, and into the dream, back to the one that was kind of the dream with knights and stuff on it. I wasn't sure whether that was meant to actually represent baptism, which is probably people who are kind of looking at this are probably thinking that potentially, because there was the woman who was walking into the water and then coming out of the water, and then there was the blood part. So I don't know whether that was anything to do with blood sacrifice or something like that, but it seemed a bit strange that she was cutting herself. So yeah, I don't really know. I don't know, but it had that kind of potential baptism kind of aspect to it. Yeah, I'm not sure, but again, that's where I'll end this one. So as I said, it was a double dream, but it's quite a thorough one. Explanation, hopefully, with all that, and a little bit in a way of scripture as well. Okay, I will get you on the next one.